Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Way That I See It. This is my podcast, and actually, at the time of recording, I am in Santorini. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see obviously the gorgeous white buildings behind me. I'm in Ia. And if you're listening to this on my podcast, then hopefully the sound quality is pretty good. You might hear some super loud Greek people behind me, but all part of the experience. But I wanted to jump on live because I didn't get the chance to do one before I came away. It was a mad Monday. But what I really wanted to share with you guys is actually something that came to me last night, on our last night here in Ia, which was all around the fact that actually the things that break your heart can really have the power to transform your life in so many ways. And I found that last night I got super upset about stray dogs in the center of Fira. I could clearly see they were well fed and they were taken care of. And I understand that the culture here is so different when it comes to animals. And, Josh was reassuring as ever, but for me, one of the greatest lessons and something it reminded me of is that often the things that break your heart are actually the things that will change your life. Now, when I talk about having a broken heart, I don't mean from just a romantic relationship. I don't mean from, losing a loved one. I mean things that make you sad about the world, things that make you hurt, things that you look at and you feel pain. And I definitely am one of the most empathic people I've ever met. I feel energy like a sponge. And this is why boundaries is such a big thing for me. And I'm sure I'll do a podcast coming up on boundaries. But for me, knowing the things that break my heart has absolutely pivoted me and pointed me in the direction of my goals, and in things that things that I never really thought about, things that I would never have been on my want list, desires list, to-do list. But those are things that came up for me when actually I felt the pain of them. And so, if I go back to my very first heartbreak, it was a long-term relationship. Actually, no, before that, I remember having a heartbreak. I was like maybe 16, and, it was brutal. And we had mobile phones, new mobile phones. I think it was a Nokia 3310. And I was like, why hasn't he texted me back? And that was when I first got one of my first best piece of advice from my auntie, that just to take things 5 minutes at a time. So, I'd make cups of tea, even though I wouldn't drink them. Or I would, go for a walk around the block, and then that would be that. And so, that was one of my first pieces of advice. But without that experience, I wouldn't have had that piece of advice, and therefore I wouldn't have been able to take that into my life and use that as something that has really helped me and transformed over time. And then my second breakup was a long-term relationship that ended pretty toxically, and actually turned out long-term in the end. And I wouldn't say we're friends, but definitely acquaintances, always have a chat, ask about each other's parents, that kind of thing. But that was such a toxic relationship for me that I actually really struggled to handle that breakup. But this is where I stumbled across a book, and I have actually recommended this book over 200 times, because Amazon tells me how many times I've sent a recommendation link. There you go, just another power of recommendation. And this book is called A Breakup Because It's Broken. And this book is written by the same people who wrote He's Just Not That Into You. And in this book, it calls women super foxes. Now, guys, let's face it, where do you think that took me? Everywhere. Because my nickname is Lucy Superfox. It's how I refer to myself. I created a coaching team called Team Superfox, which ran for 6 years, actually, in the end. Women getting on stage, feeling good about themselves, being confident. And then my mindset coaching, still under kind of the end of the next level kind of life umbrella, but I'm still very much Lucy Superfox, and my Arbonne success line is called the Superfox Nation. And so that book, that heartbreak led me to that book, and that book has led me to changing not only my own life, but all of the people that have read that book, experienced it, and off the back of become super foxes or been part of my nation, etc. So again, just two clear examples there from what I call a standard breakup of how those tiny things can absolutely transform and change your life. And so for me, those are two distinct ones. I've been through, further kind of romantic breakups since that point, or emotional relationships. But I've also been through other things that you would never classically say have broken your heart. When I walked away from Team Superfox and decided I no longer wanted to be a prep coach, it wasn't something that, made my soul sing anymore. I wanted to focus more on the mindset, business, accountability, coaching side of things. When I moved away from that, I cried about it a lot. I found it really challenging and really difficult, and I questioned myself. But actually what that process enabled me to do was realize that what I was grieving for wasn't being a prep coach. What I was grieving for was the girls that I'd spent that time with, and how I'd watched them grow and how I'd seen them transform. But, just because I was not going to be their coach anymore didn't mean I couldn't do that. And so, one of my proudest moments is getting to see girls step on stage over the last, 2 weekends. And before that, who I've used to coach, and seeing them do well was like an incredible moment for me. And I didn't feel the need to take credit for that. I was just like, wow, good for them. That's amazing. And so I think, sorry, helicopter. And so I think the key thing there is is knowing what you're actually grieving for, is working that out. And again, but what that heartbreak taught me when I realized what driven coaching was, it gave me real clarity on what I wanted to do with my career, with my business, and with my life. And then, moving into my example of last night, of stray dogs and, that breaking my heart. And the posts I share on Facebook are of dogs that need a rehome or animals that need a rehome. The charities I donate to is to homelessness and animal charities, like, a considerable amount of money every single month. And I do that. And that's clearly because there's a pain there. There's something that I feel like needs to be fixed, or I need to go fix. And so I think for me, I've talked about this in this week's newsletter. It's all about the fact that, actually, I believe there's two things. If something causes you pain or heartache, you either need to go heal that area of your life, or it's something that you need to take action on. And so for me, I know that those things, the heartbreak from last night is something I need to take action on. If I was still grieving about previous relationships, about my divorce, about, the coaching, then I need to go heal that, because that's a chapter of my life that's closed. And so if there's an area of your life right now where you're still feeling pain, you're still feeling trauma, and of course, always seek the right professional help. But if there's an area of your life that's still breaking your heart, you either need to go heal it or you need to take action on it. And for me, those things that have broken my heart, those moments have pivoted me in such powerful directions. I have the life that I have because of those things. And that's why I wouldn't change a single one of them. So I guess my question to you and my lesson to you this week is, what breaks your heart? And what of those things that break your heart do you need to go heal and deal with? And what of those things do you need to take action on? Because I really believe that healed people can change the world, and people who are acting out of love, acting out from a real heart-centered place, will also change the world with their action. And so what are you going to go heal and deal, and what are you going to go take action on in the next week? Because if there's something in there, I believe it's a calling, I believe it's a reason, I believe it's a purpose, I believe it's meaning. There's a great quote by Esther Hicks, which is, if you have the wherewithal to desire it, you have the wherewithal to make it happen. And so if there's something that continuously feels like it's breaking your heart, you have what it takes to transform that, to help that change go to the next level, or whatever it might be. So that is it for this week. If you're not subscribed to my newsletter, make sure to go do that. I'll pop it in the link below to this text, but it's lucysuperfox.com. There'll be a lovely little pop-up that pops up in your face to join my newsletter. I send one out every 2 weeks, every kind of 2 to 4 weeks. It's very much written from the heart. It's all about the way that I see it. So this is my podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope I'll see you on the next episode.